dash 3. So we're going to find roots by factoring. All right, there's 3 other words. Okay, so now we're doing notes. Okay, we're going to put your homework away. I need you to focus on this so you know how to do this one when we get to this. Okay. All right, so there's 3 other words that mean the same thing as roots. What are those 3 other words? What's my trick to help you remember? Rocks. Okay, so write rocks somewhere. Rocks. Okay, R stands for what? Roots. Roots is already on there. Okay, O is zeros because it looks like a 0. X is x-intercept. S is solutions. Okay, so all of these words mean the same thing, and they all mean what? They all mean x-intercept. Where does it cross the x-axis? Okay, example 1 says circle the roots. What do roots mean? Roots mean x-intercept. Okay, circle the roots on the graph below. All right, so let's look at this graph. Okay, what are my roots? Where they cross the x-axis. So circle them. So I've got -1. And what's my other root? +5. Okay, so it says the roots are. Now remember, when we write this, we have to write it as an ordered pair, x comma y. And I'm talking about the x-axis. So my number is going to go in the x spot of the ordered pair. So my first number is -1. So -1, 0. And the second one is 5. We're still talking about x-intercept, so 5 is going to go in the x spot. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to find these without looking at a graph. Okay, really, you already know how to do it, you just didn't know that you were doing it. Okay, I already taught you how to do it, but since I just didn't tell you when you do this, this is also your x-intercept. Okay, so it's not really anything new today, all right? But I'm going to show you how to do it algebraically. Remember the other day I said when we went over this 8-2, and I said this is your new equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, and I said, where's my book? We've already been doing these equations. So I can give you an example of how we've already been looking at these equations. If you look here, here's an example of an old notes. Ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are numbers. Okay, so this is a quadratic equation. We just weren't talking about it being a quadratic equation. We were just focusing on factoring it, right? Okay, so we've already been doing quadratic equations. So, same thing, all right? We're going to take these quadratic equations, and I'm going to show you how to find the roots, like this, -1 and 5, without actually looking at a graph. Okay, so we're going to do it algebraically. All right, so before we start, what must y equal in a root?
0.
So if you look at my my ordered pairs, what are my y's every time for an x-intercept? 0. So that y has to be 0. Okay, because y always equals 0 in a root, we can use this in algebra to find the roots without a graph. Okay.
Yay.
So it says, given the equation above, y equals x squared minus 4x minus 5, find the roots using algebra. So today, I don't want you to graph it and look for those roots. Okay, sometimes it might be a decimal. Okay, it's hard to tell what the decimal is when you're just looking at a graph. Okay, so this helps us find it exactly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this equation, x squared minus 4x minus 5, and I'm going to break it down. Okay, so we're really solving for x, okay, and whatever my x is going to be my intercept. Right here, this little 2, okay, this squared, anytime you have a squared equation, that means that you're going to have a U-shaped graph, right? Okay, anytime you have a squared equation like this with a 2, that means you're going to have a U-shaped graph. Well, if you have a U-shaped graph, how many x's do you have? 2. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to break down this equation and find both of those x's. Okay, well, in order to do that, we're going to x factor. So multiply and add. Okay, you know how to do this, so it's kind of like a review. How do I find the top number? Do you remember? First times last. So my first number is a 1, and my last number is a -5. So 1 times -5 is -5. How do I find the bottom number? It's the middle number, which is -4. It's the middle number, which is -4. Okay. Am I finished doing the x? No. Now what do I have to do? Find my left and right numbers that go here, right? Okay, and how do I do that? The graph. So everybody turn your calculators on. Do this with me for reminders. And we're going to go to a graph. What do I plug in? Perfect. You're always going to plug in this top number, -5 divided by x. Enter. And then what? Control T. And I'm looking for two numbers that add together to get me -4, which are -1 and -5. Okay. Is my x filled out? Okay, now what? Y'all remember?
Plug it in.
Plug it in where?
To a double distribution.
Okay, so I'm going to plug it into my empty sets of parentheses. Remember? So I've got x plus 1 and x minus 5. Does everybody have that on your paper? Do I need to divide?
No.
Why?
Because there's no number in front of.
Because there's no number in front of this x squared. It's just a 1. Okay, so I don't need to divide because if I divide by 1, nothing changes. Okay, so that's my x factor. So typically this would be your answer, right?
Right.
But what am I looking for? The roots. I'm looking for what the x is equal. Okay? So right now, does this tell me what the x is equal? No. Okay? I can't say x plus 1 and x minus 5 are my roots. Those are my x-intercepts. That doesn't make sense. Okay? It's got to be one number. That's my x-intercept. Just like here, I have one number here and one number here. Those are my x-intercepts. So now what I'm going to do, which is the new part, okay, I'm going to take each set of parentheses and set it equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to take this x plus 1 and equal it to 0. And then I'm going to take x minus 5 and equal it to 0. So I've got two different equations here. Because how many x's do I have? 2. I've got two x-intercepts, so I got to have two separate equations. Okay? Now, I want to know what my x-intercepts are, so I need to get x by itself. I need to solve for x. And how do I get x by itself? I need to get rid of a positive 1, and in order to get rid of it, we got to do its opposite. Opposite of positive 1 is minus 1. And what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. So 1 minus 1 equals 0, so cross it out. X equals 0 minus 1 is -1. So is x by itself?
Yes.
So this is my first root. -1, 0 is my first root. Now I got to go find my other root. So now I got to solve this equation. How do I get x by itself? Opposite of a -5 is add 5. And I got to do that to both sides. So x equals 5. And that's my second root. Okay? And that's my answer. I have my two roots. Questions so far?
Are there going to be answers on y? Like, on y, would it be like
Are there going to be numbers here?
A different number or just
No. Because what is y always in a root?
a zero?
A 0. Okay, makes sense? Good question. Okay, all right, flip it over. Okay, steps for finding. Now, there's not 6 steps. Okay, so step 1 is X factor. And that means everything with X factor. Finding the top number, finding the bottom number, finding the side numbers in the calculator, plugging it in the parentheses, all that is X factor. Okay? So once you finish your X factor problem, then step 2 is set each parentheses equal to 0. Set each parentheses equal to 0. Okay, step 3. Once we set them equal to 0, then we're going to solve for x. How many times are we going to solve for x? Twice. Okay, because you have 2 intercepts. And then last but not least, we're going to write each x as a root in an ordered pair. We're gonna have a space right now. Write each x as a root in an ordered pair. So then we put them in ordered pairs. And what's y always in your ordered pair?
0.
Y is always going to be 0 as a root. Okay, in your ordered pairs. Questions? How is that? Is that too difficult? It's just adding one more step to something that you already know. And technically, you already know how to solve. Right? Okay. All right, example 3. That's it. That's all the steps. I put an extra number on there. Okay. All right, example 3. Find the roots of the quadratic equation by factoring. Okay, I want you to factor to do it. So draw your x factor, multiply and add. How do I find the top number?
You just multiply.
First number times last. So 1 times 15 is 15. How do I find the bottom number? Middle number, which is 8. Then what? Go to my graph, and what am I going to plug in? 15 divided by x. Control T. And I'm looking for 2 numbers that add together to get 8, which are? Perfect. Good job. 3 and 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. All right. Got my x filled out. Now I do my parentheses. X plus 3, x plus 5. And I'm finished with x factoring. So set each parentheses equal to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to do x plus 3 equals 0. X plus 5. Solve. How do I get this x by itself? Minus 3 to both sides. These cancel. I'm left with x equals negative 3. Okay, so my first root is negative 3, 0. Okay, then I'm going to solve the next one. X plus 5. So I get rid of this 5 by doing its opposite, which is a minus 5. X equals negative 5. X is by itself, so my second root is negative 5, 0. Questions? Well, okay? Okay. Number 4. Find the roots of the quadratic equation by factoring. All right, so draw your x factor. Multiply, add. How do I find the top? Multiply what?
First.
First times last. So 2 times -9 is -18. How do I find the bottom number? Middle number, -3. Then you plug it in your calculator to the graph. -18 divided by x. I'm looking for two numbers that add together to get -3, which are 3 and -6. 3 plus -6 gives me -3. Okay, I got my x filled out. Draw your empty sets of parentheses. X plus 3, x minus 6. Am I ready to solve? Why do I have to divide, Minnow? Okay, look right here. This is the most important part that everybody forgets. You've got a number here. That's not 1, so what do I need to do with this 2? Divide each number. So 3 divided by 2 and -6 divided by 2. Okay, if I divide 3 by 2, do I get a whole number? No. Okay, so what do I need to do?
Put the 2 in front of that.
Take that bottom number, bump it in front of the x. So I've got 2x plus 3. 2x plus 3. What about -6 divided by 2? Do I get a whole number? Yep, so it just turns to that whole number, which is -3. -6 divided by 2 is -3. Okay, now am I ready to solve? Yes. Okay, so 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x minus 3 equals 0. Draw your line. Okay, now this one's adding another step to it, all right? So what do I need to move first? The 3, okay? The 2 and the x are being multiplied. We're going to save that for the last thing. Okay, we always want to do what's being added or subtracted first. Okay, well the 3 is being added. So the opposite of a positive 3 is -3 on each side. 3 minus 3 is 0. I'm left with 2x equals -3. Now what?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. Okay, and I'm left with x equals -3 over 2. I'm going to leave it as a fraction. So my first root is -3 over 2, comma 0. Questions? Okay, yes.
Were there other fractions?
What do you mean?
In the practices, would there be
Fraction?
yeah.
Maybe. Probably. Okay. All right, solve your next one. How do I get rid of a -3? Plus 3 on each side. Please stop tapping. X equals 3. X is by itself, so this root is 3, comma 0. Those are my two roots. That's where they cross the x-axis at. Questions? Okay, you guys do number 5. Okay, if you haven't found your missing numbers yet, there's 3 and -1.
Who's the negative one?
Yep. Okay, then you do your empty sets of parentheses. X plus 3, x minus 1. Y'all gotten here yet? Is this right so far? That's what you have? X plus 3, x minus 1?
Like, for example, if you like, the front number, like, is -3, you divide them,
Yes.
x is gonna be 3.
Okay, so if I divide, good question. Divide, -3, -3. Divide by -3. Okay, so what's 3 divided by -3? -1. So this becomes x minus 1. Okay, what's -1 divided by -3? Positive. Okay, so these become positive. I'm going to take this 3 and bump it here. So 3x plus 1. Okay? So did everybody get that?
Because of positive, because -3 and
-1 and -3 become positive. Yes. Negative divided by negative is positive. Okay, so once you're here, then we set them equal to 0. X minus 1 equals 0. And 3x plus 1 equals 0. Solve. So x minus 1, opposite of a minus 1 is a plus 1. Plus 1. X equals 1. 1 comma 0 is my first root. Okay. Then I solve this one. -1, -1. Start with that number that's being added or subtracted first. Okay. So 3x equals -1 divided by 3. X equals -1/3. So my second root is -1/3, 0. If you put -1/3 first and 1 last, that's okay. Like if you switched your order first, yeah.
So anytime, like, there's a number in front of the s at the last step, it's gonna be a fraction. Like each time.
Not necessarily,
No.
because I could have had a 6. I could have been subtracting by 6, and -6/3 would be -2.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Not necessarily. Okay. All right, last one. How many terms do I have on number 6?
2.
2. So do I need to do x factor? Do I have to do x factor if I only have 2
You
terms?
can do the square root.
Yes, good. Is 4 a perfect square?
Yeah.
Is 25 a perfect square?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so go ahead and start with your empty sets of parentheses. What's the square root of 4?
2.
So 2x and 2x. 1 plus, 1 minus. Y'all remember this? What's the square root of 25? 5. If it only has 2 terms like this.
We can make one side positive, one side.
Yep, one's positive, one's negative. Now, am I finished?
No.
No.
Do the extra step.
Now I have to do what? Set them equal to 0. Okay, solve them. Make sure you're solving. Okay, first one, 2x plus 5. What do I need to move first?
Regular.
The regular number, which is
5.
5, the positive 5. You always do what's being added or subtracted first. So opposite of a positive 5 is -5. 2x equals -5. Now what? They're touching, so what do I need to do?
Divide.
Good. A little bit. Divide. Good. Okay, 2's cancel. X equals -5/2. So my first root, -5/2, comma 0. Then I do the other side. How do I get rid of a -5? Add it. So 2x equals 5. Now what? Divide. Divide by 2. X equals positive 5 over 2. So this one is a positive 5 over 2, comma 0 are my two roots. How's that? Okay. Do y'all see how much work is on this paper? It's a lot of work, right? Okay. When I grade your homework, what am I going to expect to see? A lot of work. Okay. You guys, in order to be successful past Algebra 1, as in geometry, and Algebra 2, college algebra, whatever you're taking, you have to know how to do this stuff by hand. That's why I teach it to you by hand. Could you technically do this in the calculator? Yes. Okay, but for you to be successful, because I care about you guys, you also need to know how to do it like this. Okay, so I want to see you do it like this. Everybody got it? See? Okay. All right. We're going to